This video now is the last of the series. And here now I have to deal with the fourth king, Marvelous Marvin Hagler, who has been inducted into the Nevada Hall of Fame and is a Hall of Famer both in the World Boxing Hall of Fame and also in the International Boxing Hall of Fame. Marvin Hagler worked to get where he is at today. He was never given any handouts. He was never seen as a superstar until later on in his career, though a very spectacular career he had. And he represents those boxers out there who did not get the shine they deserved to get. And there are enormous amounts of boxers out there who were wonderful, had great performances, but they don't get the shine they should get, right? Now, why I didn't include Marvin Hagler in the criteria that I was speaking of to compare, Mayweather's to the four kings and to two of our all-time greats in this era, Manny Pacquiao and Oscar De La Hoya, is because Marvelous Marvin Hagler, he was a true middleweight and he spent his entire career at middleweight. So some of the criteria has to be sort of modified to be able to really speak on Marvin Hagler compared to all the other fighters I just mentioned. The goal here when you're talking about a guy who has been in one division versus guys who've been in multiple divisions is you really want to look at his level of competition, because a resume is really based on level of competition. It's not necessarily based on the divisions you cover, which, while that is true, you also have to look at really the level of competition. That's what really judges a fighter's skills and the challenges they have to face. There's a school of thought out there that says that it's actually better for a person to defend in one particular weight class and unify that weight class to become the undisputed champion and have successful defenses in that weight class. There is another school of thought that says that it's actually a greater challenge for a fighter to move up through weight classes, challenging heavier guys to see if his skills can match up to those guys, as other skill sets would be required to deal with bigger, stronger opposition. I am of the opinion that you have to combine both schools of thought, because it's all about the level of opposition you're facing. It's important that the opposition be of a high level all the way through. So I'm going to build my criteria around that. So the criteria has to do with how many Hall of Famers he met. It still has to do with when he won his title. Did he win against a solid, the #1 person in the world at the time, or did he win against a Hall of Famer? These are important criteria still. But included in the criteria now, we must talk about what kind of champion he was. Was he undisputed? Was he a unified champion? And how long he was able to defend his championship. Okay? And how we will do that is we compare him to those other guys as they were moving through different divisions. How long did they stay world champion for? Did they lose to certain people? So let's get into Marvin Hagler. First and foremost, before I get into that, I want to just say he had a number of rematches early on in his career. He had some losses, but he, generally speaking, avenged those losses. All right, so he rematched certain guys. I'm just going to say some of them. He rematched guys like Sugar Ray Seals, Jimmy Owens, Bobby Watts, Willie Monroe, who, by the way, is the father of Willie Monroe Jr. today. So again, boxing goes in families. Okay. Roy Jones, who's the father of Roy Jones Jr. Okay, so Roy Jones Jr. didn't just go into middleweight by chance. His father, who trained him from scratch, was the guy who was able to bring out the brilliance in this ATG, Roy Jones Jr. And of course, Roy Jones Jr. was the undisputed champion of the world at a certain point in time. All right, so these are just some of the guys. He also rematched Kevin Finnegan and some other guys. Now, his first shot at a world title came against Vito Antuofermo. Okay, he would go on to rematch Antuofermo later on, but in the first fight for the undisputed middleweight championship of the world, he fought to a draw. Okay, he would have his second chance at a world championship when he faced Alan Minter, who had beaten Vito Antuofermo to become the undisputed middleweight champion of the world, and he would beat him in the UK to become the undisputed middleweight champion of the world. So he fought one guy and he beat one guy to become that. But it was impressive. And Alan Minter, of course, was a world champion, and he was therefore the #1 guy in the world at the time. So you have to note that. He beat the #1 guy in the world at the time. Now, he went on to defend this undisputed championship 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times before he added to his championship accolades, getting the IBF World Middleweight title from Wilfred Cyprian. Okay, and again, that Wilfred Cyprian was one of the solid, high-ranked champions in the world at the time. So he was solid. Vito Antuofermo, he rematched him in the process, as I said before, to try to regain the undisputed championship, and he defeated him. So, of course, Vito Antuofermo, he was a former world champion. In the process, he also fought Mustafa Hamshaw, who was a solid contender. You know, he had beaten guys like Bobby Size, or Bobby Sizz, as I like to call him, who later became the light heavyweight champion of the world. He also beat guys like Wilfredo Benitez, who moved up to middleweight. So Mustafa Hamshaw was another very good contender. You can look at the records of the guys. Their records were pretty good. They were pretty decent. Not all of them were greatest of the greats, but they were solid guys. Okay. Then he faced Roberto Duran, who is an ATG and an all-time great, and he defeated him to defend again the undisputed championship at middleweight. Okay, he then faced Juan Domingo Roldan, and then he rematched Mustafa Hamshaw. Okay, Hamshaw, and then he faced Thomas the Hitman Hearns, who was moving up in weight, another ATG, all right, and Hall of Famer, and he defeated him in what was one of the most exciting 3-rounders you probably might ever see in boxing. He had a blitz against John Mugabe, at the time undefeated #1 contender in the whole world. So again, he fought high-level competition, and he was able to knock him out in the 11th round. It was a war. Okay, Mugabe was a guy who was knocking out everybody. Okay. Then he went on to face Sugar Ray Leonard, and by controversial split decision, he lost to him. It is still a controversial fight to this day for anybody who's watched it. But Leonard got the W, so we have to take it for what it is in the record books. So let's just recap very carefully. So he won the world championship against the #1 fighter, Alan Minter. He then went on to face a former world champion in Vito Antuofermo and beat him. He then went on to face a solid competitor in Mustafa Hamshaw. He went on to face his first Hall of Famer in Roberto Duran and ATG. He then went on to face his second Hall of Famer and ATG in Thomas Hearns, and he beat all those guys. And then he faced the #1 contender in the world, John Mugabe. So he fought 3 #1 ranked fighters, 2 Hall of Famers, 11 successful defenses, and an attainment of an extra title, 13 fights where he was undefeated and undisputed champion of the world. Putting that into perspective, we're going to compare him to the other gentlemen on my chart here, and you can just look at this and pay attention to it. In terms of ATGs, he falls right in there with all of the greats. that you see here. In terms of level of opposition, you can see again that he matches up in terms of #1 fighters and in terms of Hall of Famers. All right? And he had a number of solid competitors. And the other point which we are matching up here is you can see that he was undisputed champion and undefeated for 13 fights. Okay? And you can look at the others here. And he faced solid competition, and you see how many solid competitors he faced. So you can see that Marvin Hagler, he matches up with the other guys. Once we leave out weight divisions, he matches up with the other guys quite well. Okay? And that's why he deserves to be in the fray. But again, if you look at Floyd Mayweather, look at his achievements. Look at his achievements compared to the others. You should throw him right in there because he belongs, right? In some respects, like I said, he's even better. So there you have it, folks. You guys have a great one.